Hello, hello. This is Yuri of Moving Sales Professionals and Let's Talk Moving podcast. And with me today, I have Boris Svirsky with Safeway Moving Inc. in business since 2019 and in the industry since 2004. How you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. Good to have you. So, how did you get started in the moving industry?
I lived in New York for a very long time, and my mom's ex-husband ran a local moving company, and I was in high school, and he just wanted me to work. He needed somebody he could trust, so he put me on as a helper, and little skinny kid of myself running local moves in high school era. It was a crazy time, as you're aware, the early 2000s and moving. I
That's same
built my
time as I got when I got started as well.
Yeah, the
So,
Northeast was a great time for moving at that time, and
oh,
it was a learning experience for a long time. And
yeah, I actually got started on the West Coast at that same time, so I was on the opposite side of the country.
well,
I started in Los Angeles.
super busy as well,
Oh yeah.
even then,
Yeah. Good money. That's
for
why I lost my
sure.
job because I was making too much money. So,
I could never leave this industry. I tried. I'd done a few things
right?
over the course of these decades, and it's one of these industries that, prior to COVID, it was always like run by these like archaic strategies that I looked at it and I went to college, I got a degree, and I'm like, you know what, this industry could use a little bit of nuances and our nuanced approach and reinvigoration. And now it's happening. Now you're seeing all these companies upgrade their marketing and technology. Finally, industries seems like it's evolving, but
Right. That yeah,
time will
that's
tell.
I agree with that 100%. When I got started, obviously I did things on the truck. I was doing sales, but at the same time I had to run out and do work. I was in my early 20s. So I was doing a lot of everything. So I had to be on the truck, I had to be in the warehouse, I had to be on the phone. I did a lot of things without actually owning a moving company. And eventually when I opened up Moving Sales Professionals in 2018, it was exactly what you're talking about, innovation in the sense of at that point I had so many years of sales experience that I had even before I got into the moving industry because started, of course, in the fundraising industry. I did not start in moving as far as sales goes anyway. And it led me to basically saying, hey, my idea of opening up moving sales professionals was to put professional sales into the moving industry. And it's definitely has been working. And now for a word from our sponsors. If you're a moving business owner, you may have already heard of Moversville, an email marketing service that helps moving companies increase, repeat, and referral business. But have you heard of Moversville Connect? Moversville Connect is an incredible resource for all things moving. They feature an array of vendors and services that cater specifically to the moving industry. You can find companies that provide moving software, moving sales services, marketing services, moving equipment providers, and much, much more. Visit moversville.com today to learn more.
Yeah, I could see that. When you think of a moving company, for the most part,
Sure.
the leadership in the companies, the majority of them, they don't have the wherewithal, they don't have like the organizational structure to fill in the necessary holes to scale. So sales is obviously number one priority on the funnel, and then of course service. And most companies just focus on service. And
Right.
now we're seeing a trend, a change in trend.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, speaking of changing trends, what are the three most important things that a moving company owner should be focused on in order to build a successful moving company?
Sure, I'll actually give you four, and these are our pillars of why my brand is scaling and has grown a lot. Culture is a big thing, obviously, for us. It's probably the most important for any industry is, how do you define your culture and how do you implement culture? But as far as service, the four pillars that we like nailed down, since we primarily deal in long distance, we put the ball in the customer's court by implementing this idea of these four pillars. Number one, how do I know all my items will arrive? Number two, how do I know nothing will get damaged? Number three, how do I know that my delivery will be within a reasonable time? And number four, how do I know that my price is what I'm quoted at will be the same price I move within reason? These are the four pillars, and any company in the moving industry should try to, you know, focus in on these four things. At least it worked for us, and we believe that, like this is the way we grow, and this is what we want our customers to have faith in. And our entire staff from sales to, you know, every single aspect of this, our movers, they fall in line with this culture, and it's definitely helped us.
Well, I think in general, brand and company culture are the things that every moving company, and not just moving company, any company in general should be focused on because that's how you build a successful business. In my mind, is that you want to have your employees or your contractors or anybody that's in any way, shape, or form affiliated with your company, you want them to buy in. You want them to be happy with the brand and the company that they're representing. Frankly, as far as sales goes, from my side, I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to feel comfortable that the service that I just sold to your customer is going to be the service that they're going to get. I mean, granted, we all know things happen on the move. We all know that people are not always forthcoming and honest about what services they need, what items they're looking to move, and what have you. We all know that happens. But within reason, as long as, I want to work with companies that basically deliver on what I promised them.
Does your company need more creative marketing and ad campaigns to improve traffic and organic leads? Well, Moving Sales Professionals has a solution for you. We have partnered with social media marketing agency that has over 300 million views on their ads and videos across social media, and they have generated over $35 million for their clients over the last 10 years alone. Their services include content creation, social media ads, pay-per-click campaigns, website and funnel development, Google Ads, email marketing campaigns, lead generation, and much, much more. For limited time only, they have discounted rates for their services. Sign up for a free consultation call with us via our Calendly link on our website or below this video.
Yeah, I very much agree with this. Years ago, we ran a broker under the same name, and our whole focus was how do we fill in the gaps and how do we fill in the holes that most of these moving companies mess up on. Obviously, what you're alluding to is, the pricing and time frame of delivery and making sure nothing gets broken and lost. The reality is you can't put that into perspective without putting it in yourself. So culture is the foundation. Any business, any moving company has to have their entire staff bought in, but how do you make them buy in? It's not about, salary. It's not about income. Realistically speaking, that's like a short band-aid. Say you have like 75 movers working for you and you're paying them more than the next competitor. What's stopping the next competitor from coming in, like during peak season, coming in stealing your movers? Just more money, right? But that can end easily by just creating a stable foundation of consistency, trust, having a voice that the movers can actually listen to, and most importantly, having their own voice that someone listens to within the staff, having a give and take. And it takes a while. And at the end of the day, a lot of moving companies I'm seeing growth in this space. Culture is probably the most important for foundation, but then actually completing services and doing it the way it's supposed to be done is, the backbone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, companies, what do potential customers trust? They trust the brand. Is it something that's scalable? Is it something that's going to work? Is it something that, frankly, they can promote, that they can support, that they can tell their friends about? Or, it goes the other way. Is it something that's completely horrible that you want to warn all your friends about? Because what a lot of people don't understand, there's a lot of movers out there that go back to, schools that were out there for movers, whether it was Israeli companies or Eastern European companies in the past that were more worried about making the money today. They weren't so much worried about money down the
Right.
road, couple of years down the road, couple of months down the road. They were worried about making their buck today, right? But here's the reality. So, uh, if the person is happy with the company, they're gonna go out and they're gonna tell their friends, they're gonna tell their family, they're gonna tell anybody that's looking to listen. And frankly, their coworkers know that they're moving. Their friends know that they're moving. Their family knows that they're moving.
Oh
So
yeah.
those family, those coworkers, those friends, they will reach out to you and say, "Hey, how did your move go?" They will ask that, right? But then here's the opposite side of it. If the move went horrible, you just lost not only the customer that had a horrible experience, but anyone that they talk to. And then it gets even worse from there because it goes the same way. So there are people out there, that moving companies out there, that believe that if the customer cusses them out, that that's correct amount of follow-ups, that that's what you should hear happening. As somebody
Yeah.
that's been doing sales for 20, what is it now, 22 years of my life, that is absolutely the worst possible thing that you can do, because what it does, you haven't even done the service for somebody, right? And they've already had a bad experience with you, right? So what happens is, when somebody asks them after their actual move, not with you, happens, they're going to say, "Oh, how did your move go?" "Oh, it went well." Or it didn't go so well. But man, during the process, these people were just lighting me up, especially this one company, and blah 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 blah. Right? They just destroyed you, or in any potential you might have had with any of the people that they're talking to. There's got to be a fine line. So like, this is the same thing that I tell my salespeople. I'm okay if you flirt with that line, but I never want you to cross it. So as salespeople, we hear when the customer is getting irritated. And when you hear that, those notes in the voice of somebody that you're talking to, that's your sign. Stop. If that means take him out of your system, never call him again, that's a good thing. If they come back to you, they come back to you. Okay, great. But at least you won't end up with a bad, bad, bad thing, and you haven't even done anything. You haven't even done any work for the person. So it's like, don't create that negative, you know, vibe out there about your company and about your service and about the people that work for you, when you don't have to. There's, yeah, of course, we all want business. We all want work. That's the whole point of doing this in the first place, right? We spend countless times, on vacation talking to our movers instead of spending time with our families and our kids and everything else, and our wives getting pissed at us, right? So we all have to deal with this. Wives, husbands, depending if you're a female owner or male owner or whatever, right? These days, the industry is becoming a lot more diverse, right? But regardless, if we're going to spend that type of stuff, we want to make sure
Sure.
that the experience is positive, right? Even if they don't choose the service, because you don't know. If you left them with a good feeling about your company, even if they didn't choose you, if they had a bad experience with somebody that they did end up choosing, what they're going to say, even though they didn't do work with you, they're going to say, people are still going to ask them, "How did your move go?" And they're going to say, "Oh, it was absolutely horrible." And you know what, though? During the process, I was talking to a bunch of companies, and it was this company, and they were absolutely great. And you know what? In retrospect, seeing where I am today, I really should have chosen them. That's what you
Happens a
want.
lot. That
That's
happens
what
very
you want.
often.
You want
Yeah.
them to be left. Once again, you have not done actual work for them, right? But now, because you left them with overall good experience with you, now they're going to be your proponent. They're going to be going out there and putting out good information about you.
Pretty much that it's a common problem. Or rather, being that you run an operation yourself, I mean, like we've experienced this over the years.
Sure.
About 2 years ago, a little bit over a year and a half ago, actually, we invested in some AI tech that listens to every phone call, transcribes every phone call, posts some very good feedback live during the call in regards to the sales rep to give them updated answers during the call to say, hey, other people, other representatives have found success by stating this or identifying this right in front of the sales rep's face while they're speaking. But more importantly, um, while the sales reps or customer service or any other representative speaking with the customers are while they're on the phone with the customer, what pops up is a feedback. So, we all go to banks, and you know how they would say at the end of the call, like, "Hey, you're going to get a automated questionnaire at the end of the call." Probably still get these questions. I'm not sure why these banks still do this, but I bank with Bank of America. They just, on the other day, at the end of the call, they said, "Hey, I have a survey coming up. Please don't hang up, et cetera, yada yada yada." Our system already has a feature built in that basically listens to the tonality of the customer and the tonality of the representative speaking to the customer. And based on the phrasing and based on the tonality, it'll spit out an internal survey stating the customer is annoyed or the sales rep is getting a little too flustered. So that way we know what we can train on and we can improve on. It's, the past is way past in terms of moving. We're not dealing with these kinds of situations anymore where we have to now do a quality check. We know already if our reps are getting annoyed or if the customers are getting annoyed. Now,
Yep.
being that I do strictly long distance, it's a real scenario here. We're competing with the brokers every single day,
Sure.
constantly. The lies, the manipulation. So the customer's already convinced. They see this lovely price, half my price, and they're already like romanticized by this. And
Hmm.
they get annoyed immediately when they get like the realistic price up front. But
Hmm.
the zeitgeist is currently about consumers being a little bit on edge. That's just how it is after COVID. So it
All right.
requires a lot of work to maneuver them and present them, like with a reason to actually trust a real moving companies. And I'm sure you know this very well. You're
Yeah.
dealing with this on a daily
Yeah.
basis for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. We're competing with brokers all the time. So at the end of the day, I always tell them, I said, here's the difference. This is what you're gonna see. You're gonna get the lower price. But here's the thing though. If you're competing with a broker, one of the things that we as salespeople know 100%, right? We know they lowball, right? That's how they do a lot of their stuff. Their job is to book, 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 and then they sell whatever they book, right? We know how this works, right? So I tell the customer that. I ask him, okay, well, you spoke of this company, you got this amazing price. How many cubic feet did they quote you? Start there because 9 out of 10 times that cubic footage is going to be lower than what you just got over the phone talking to them. And once they tell you, oh, they quoted
Yeah.
me 300 cubic feet and you got 600, 700, you go like, okay, well, you know what? Why don't we do this just for your sake? Let's compare apples to apples, okay? Let's hypothetically say that you do, in fact, have 300 cubic feet. This is what my price would be. Let's hypothetically say that you do, in fact, have 600 cubic feet, which is what I think you do have. Let's see what their price would be at that price. Let's compare now.
Right. So, I mean, even at that, so if we talk about cubic feet and lowballing, it's very common no matter what.
Yeah, sure.
I'd go a step further because this is what we deal with consistently.
Hmm.
Even the major van lines, our number one competitor isn't brokers. I mean, we deal with them a lot. Granted, we probably don't even speak to customers that book with brokers consistently, but we compete with the major van lines constantly. And even currently, a lot of the major van lines are, they're lowballing a little bit, but the way we provide value, and I think, for your people that listen to your podcast, it might help them. Price isn't the most important factor. Usually it is
Yeah, well,
for
ultimately, you don't want to sell. First of all, you don't want to sell the price. You always want to sell the value, because ultimately, the customers that their priority is the price versus value. If that's their priority,
not the customer
realistically,
for you.
that's not the customer for you. The reason why it's not the customer for you, because if that's what they're shopping for, they're probably going to go for the low ball. If that's what they're shopping for, they're probably not going to go into a deep dive into the inventory that you want them to take because you want to provide them with accurate numbers. At least that's our policy here at Moving Sales Professionals. We want accurate quotes. I'd rather not book a job
Right.
than book them at something I know 100% is wrong. Because you know what? Unlike other competitors, we're going to be there on the day of the move talking to them. So if we lowballed, we're the ones that are going to have to deal with the aftermath. So it's in our best interest to make sure that it's done correctly in the first place. So at that's why you want the customer ultimately that wants the accurate quote. You want the customer that would rather have an overestimate rather than underestimate. That's the
Oh,
customer that you want because that's the customer that's going to appreciate the value.
there's no doubt. We've all been through these things. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking to sales professionals, building value is not easy, especially during
Nope.
wintertime. And right now we're walking into season, so there's going to be a large amount of value. Most moving companies this is the time for them to make the money, these next 3 to 4 months. And then it's slow season and you're barely scraping away some profit. To give some advice, I mean, where we saw struggle was always competing with the low ball price and trying to navigate this. And we've come across some new strategies. Most important thing that we teach our reps is to identify that cost is fixed for any moving company, no matter who it is. If you're going to be dealing with sales customers that are just focused on pricing, no matter what fuel, is, between about 5% variable across the country. Labor across the country is constant. It's going to be either hourly wage, depending on if you're a local mover, or it's going to be a fixed price if you're a long distance mover competing with other long distance moving companies. So if you identify the nuances of there is a fixed price for delivery, there's a fixed price for pickup, and just present that, you can easily identify that these other companies that are lowballing, they're either really, really struggling to book business and they're just going to book whatever. But at the end of the day, if we focus back on the four pillars, it's what a customer really wants is to be delivered. They don't want to be picked up. They want a good, honest delivery almost always. And
Right.
just identifying that, you're able to then start pushing the customer to say, okay, yes, I understand that pricing is fixed. Pickups is going to be consistent no matter what company I go with. Delivery fixed. There's no change. Even if you go with the major van lines, you go with a local company,
Mhm.
they're paying the crew the same way. They're paying for
Right.
materials the same exact cost. Some companies pay higher for insurance, and that's a telltale sign if they're, growing correctly or if they're not making business strategies that will improve on their cost of insurance, or they just have
Absolutely.
stupid drivers that make mistakes and cause their business to really fall apart on the insurance costs. Sales and moving, it's getting harder and harder every year for most companies. But if you have an opportunity to focus and actually dig deep and to ask yourself, what am I trying to do here? Just make money, or do I want a sustainable operation that can grow and
Absolutely.
I can actually have people grow with me? Um, I used to run a broker years ago, and our main focus was to do it the right way. Being that I was a mover for a long time and then I did sales at other companies, I realized very quickly, like, I know what it takes to actually complete a move. I'm not one of these, sales guys that works for a broker that, just wants to book business, has no idea what he's talking about or she's talking about.
Sure.
But because I'm booking, I feel good about myself. That's what these brokers are doing. They don't realize what's happening to these
I don't
customers.
know. See, I can't, I could never bring myself to feel that way because to me, what makes me feel good is knowing that the job that we're actually helping somebody. Yeah, of
Sure.
course, I'm making money in the process, but I want to feel good about it. I don't want to be in a situation where I quoted a certain amount to an 80-year-old lady who's on fixed income, and then on the day of the move, she gets really nailed, and I feel like crap. I would never want that situation myself. I mean, obviously, there are salespeople out there that don't care, but like, frankly, if you're a moving company owner, do you really want that type of salesperson working for you? Ask yourself that.
No, definitely not. I mean, we've all had salespeople working for us that, make mistakes, and we would have to, once the mistake is made, I hated the whole practice of wrapping it with a band-aid and solving the problem.
Right.
Being preemptive and creating policies and
Yeah.
systems that prevent
And
problems
mistakes are
is
going to happen. We're all humans, but one thing is a mistake that's an honest mistake that happens for whatever reason, but that reason is not you trying to book a job for lower when you know 100% where that's wrong. It's just something that happens because we're human versus it happens because we're trying to book X amount of money and that we really don't care what happens on the day of. Ultimately, if you're trying to build a good business and you want to be like, look, I talk to a lot of companies that are second, third, fourth generation movers, right? You don't get to be a second, third, fourth generation mover by doing things the wrong way. Maybe initially, but sooner
yeah,
or later, you're going to have to make adjustments. You're going to have to fix things. You're going to have to make sure that things are working the right way. You're going to have to be one of the good guys, right? And in order to do that, you have to do things the right way. And maybe that means that you take on less business initially because your prices are accurate, right? Maybe that means, and honestly, sometimes I literally say to customers, well, I understand, like all the movers, if we're talking about the same thing and we're talk quoting the same thing, we should all be within a couple $100 of each other at most.
no doubt.
We should not be within thousands of dollars of each other. If we're talking about thousands of dollars difference, then we're talking about something that's entirely different. If we're talking about thousands of dollar difference, that means that something is wrong. Something is wrong. Somebody's not quoting something. It's kind of the same thing. I make sure when I talk to customers that not only am I trying to book them, I'm also trying to educate them. Okay. So in a lot of cases, I'm telling them that, look, if we're talking about a full packing move, if this is what you want full service, you don't want to do anything, then the words all packing materials and all packing services are included have to take a special place in your heart and on your paperwork, because there are companies out there that today still say to customers, packing services are included, which
Yeah.
means, of course, packing service is included, but not the materials.
Oh
And
yeah.
of course, when you see that language, the difference between your quote that says all packing materials and all packing services are included versus packing services are included is going to be a couple of $1,000 difference. That's where that happens. Places like that, right? So, I mean, I'm still honestly like I can quote, I don't care how to quote. I don't care if it's hourly. I don't care if it's flat. I don't care if it's cubic feet. I don't care if it's pounds. It doesn't make a difference to me. But I can tell you, I was always more of a fan of quoting pounds than cubic feet, because pounds is something you can actually clearly define, because you go to a weight station, you present them with a weight ticket. They can come to the scale or they can not come to the scale. It's their choice. They sign off. If they don't go to the scale, they sign a waiver saying that they were offered and they decided not to go, right? To me, that was
Yeah.
always a better way to quote long distance, personally, for me, because not to say that obviously we know if your tires are not on the scale the right way. Obviously, we know if your movers are off the truck when it's being checked in lightweight, versus being on the truck when they're checking in the heavyweight. I've worked with a company in the years past that had a mover that went on long distance move that weighed probably 300, 350 pounds on his own. And if this was a four-man long distance pickup, the extra weight of the crew was at least 1,000 pounds or pretty close to it. And then if you happen to have an extra piano sitting on that loading dock, that obviously now your weight is 1,200 pounds more than it ever should be. And that's not the
Oh
right.
yeah.
But then at the same time, you can, when you're loading a truck and you're doing things based on cubic feet, guys, let's be honest about this. This is reality, right? When I'm stacking things on the truck, I'm playing Tetris with furniture. Today, I'm having a good day. All the square holes are fitted with triangular pieces and what have you, right? But on the other day, I'm having a bad day. I'm having the same exact items, and the shipment is 300 cubic feet more than it was the day before, and it's the same items, right? So it's not an exact science, and we are humans. And today we're good at
Yeah.
stacking things. Tomorrow we're not so good at stacking things, right? So, like,
I get it. I'm with you on both options can
you
have
can go
some
both ways.
irregularities.
There's issues on both ways, but like to me, I think from a standpoint of a moving company, if you go weight, you're protecting yourself more, because you can go to a customer, well, I'm not determining your weight, the scale is, right? Versus volume when it's your physical mover. And how many customers do you know that will take a ruler and measure your inside of your truck to make sure that 100 cubic feet is 100 cubic feet and not 80?
I mean, I've been in both situations. I've worked for
Right.
moving companies years back where that would happen.
Yeah.
We've come up with a policy and a solution just to like speaking of preemptiveness, we're very much like we want to do as much moves as possible month to month because we have a large fleet, or rather medium-sized fleet. I mean, 43 trucks isn't that large. What we know, typically summertime comes and sales team books the calendar up like crazy, and then the schedule gets so tight, and we have to obviously navigate just like every other moving company has to navigate their scheduling. So what we experienced 2+ years ago was if there was more items on the day of the move, which happens with full packs most frequently,
Yeah.
then it takes 3 hours to go through a closing process at the beginning of the move. We hated that. We said, "Well, how can we narrow it down to zero, like within an hour? So that way we don't delay the next move, we don't delay the loading, we can just get on with the schedule because you're causing other customers stress if it takes
Mhm.
too long." So,
Sure.
I mean, to talk about cubic feet, we go by cubic feet technically, but our estimates, our inventory upfront is overestimated. And what we do through
Right.
this overestimation per item, like every item is a little bit bigger except boxes.
Hmm.
We know that we can't rely always on the movers to stack properly. So, we barcode everything. We use iPads for inventory and iPads for the BOL,
Mhm.
but that basically limited the customer from having any overages. If there
Right,
was an extra 25 boxes because we already overestimated on volume, no problem. Take it. We'll take it. No big deal. We want the customer reviews. We want the actual referrals. We want the testimonials. We want visibility that, like our pillars of success are put into the mind of the customer saying, this is what we're here for. No lost items, no damaged items, delivered within a decent time frame.
right.
More importantly, the price is what we agreed upon, even if the few extra items, a dozen extra items. Of course, that's not always the case. Sometimes there's a ton more items. Well, when that happens, when we start analyzing our process, like why did we miss this at booking? Why did we miss this during the process prior to the move? How does this happen? And
Mhm.
like you can only grow if you dissect your operation and
Right. And
expand on this.
sometimes it's the like for us specifically because during the training process, just in general, the way that we operate here, our goal is to try to overquote. In fact, I tell my people if you ever hear medium boxes, small boxes, put large
That's good.
because
I'd
that
say,
helps you cushion. And then if you're doing cubic feet, you can tell, I straight up tell the customer this word for word. I tell them, based on the inventory you gave me, I have, for example, 600 cubic feet. But in my experience, there's different shapes and sizes and everything else. So
mhm.
I would like to cushion just to be on the safe side. So I'd like to quote you 700 cubic feet. Would you like me to do the 700 or would you like me to do the 600 that I got from the inventory? Which way do you want me to go? I give the customer that option. And in some cases, people say just go with 600. And in some cases, people say go ahead, put 700 because you're doing that, that also tells the customer that you're not trying to lowball them. You're giving them the option
Yeah,
of
that's very
cushioning,
true.
and it also frankly, makes you sound more honest
I mean,
because
that's
you're
what
trying to
customers
be,
want.
frankly. Right, right.
So we've had this happen a lot in the past where we just, we say the same phrasing and we run to situations and we just want to avoid this situation where we get to the move and large boxes were listed, but then it's medium boxes because we wanted to protect the customer. And they're like, oh, I should get a discount because I'm using medium boxes, right? And we just didn't want to deal with that. So instead of
Sure.
adjusting on the way we speak, we adjusted the actual inventory that the sales
Right.
reps
That
were
would be one of
using
the ways. Right. That would be one of the
just to
ways.
avoid having, like, we just don't want any negative content or any negative thoughts with the customer from start to finish. So to do that, we just don't want even questions on the day of the move about I have less items, It's moving is always going to be the simplest form of industry. In my opinion, it's like a lemonade stand.
Right.
Customer wants lemonade, give them lemonade. In moving, you're only dealing with people. People complicate the industry, and it's supposed to be a simple operation. You're competing with
Absolutely.
competitors who are going to be manipulating the customer, or you're going to be doing it the right way. One way or another, you have to stick to your guns and do it the right way, or you will eventually fall apart as an operator. That's just the name of the game.
Absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, you want to do it the right way because you're trying to build something that's going to be there many years down the road. You want to have that generational moving company that's going to be around for a long time. Because if you don't do
God
things
willing.
the right way, sooner or later, somebody's gonna get
Yeah,
to you.
the
Right.
market will dictate whether you deserve to be in industry or not,
Right.
usually. And that market, obviously, a lot of moving companies navigate the market differently. Years
Right.
ago, it would be all these brokers would open up five brokers, keep one open, and then move on. And now, I'm not discrediting brokers. They're a needed operation, unfortunately, and
I
it's
mean, it's
also,
part of the important niche, and reality is this: brokers, they spend the kind of money on advertising that none of the smaller movers, frankly, can afford. How many of
yeah,
us can afford to spend $100,000 a week on advertising? Brokers can. Can you?
yeah, yeah. But I can. But that's because if the brokers didn't exist, the Penske's and the U-Hauls would raise their prices through the roof because they'd get even more market share demand.
Sure.
And they don't, that's just how it is. And the major van lines would raise their prices like crazy. I'm not saying they're an evil strategy brokering, but it's a necessary aspect of any industry because moving companies, not every one of them are organized enough to have, like what you said, a sales team that can afford to pay this kind of CPL or, cost per lead, as some of your listeners might know, might not know. Bottom line, it's been a tough 2 years for most moving companies. And before these 2 years, it was a golden era for moving.
It was.
Most moving companies overspent on power units. They thought it was going to last. And,
Well, I think the mistake that a lot of that some well, I don't know if long-term movers made that same mistake. I think, I mean, obviously, I'm not a mover, I'm a sales guy, but I think a lot of us that have been in the industry for a long time, whether it's on sales side or moving side or otherwise related to the industry, when we saw what happened the one COVID year, we knew that was too good to last. We knew. And because of that, we did business as usual, which means we worked our butt off in the summer, we worked our butt off in the winter. We did not overspend just because we saw a blip. And those of us that didn't, we're still here. And those
Oh
ones
man.
of us that did, frankly, most of them are probably not.
Yeah, a lot of companies did close down, and the ones that are surviving, now I'm seeing it, they're evolving their entire policies, they're evolving their brand, they're getting nitty-gritty with what business really is, which is, feast or famine. When it's famine, you have to grow, you have to rather, provide and adjust business wise.
Right.
And most
You
moving
have to
companies,
put
they
new
don't
po
have that.
You have to put new policies in place. You have to put in new systems in place. You have to readjust how you do payments. You have to readjust how you handle customer service. You have to readjust how you handle leads, how you acquire leads. Do you do social media? Do you do SEO? Do you do something
Exactly.
else? You have to do all of that. But of course, Boris and I can talk about this for a very long time, and there wouldn't be possibly enough time for you guys to listen to us on this, I'm sure. But it's been a pleasure to have you with us, Boris, for this podcast. Thank you very much for taking your time with me. And as I always say, the world moves on its own, so let the professionals move yours for you. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk again soon.